The Detroit Lions had what I think most of their fans would agree an incredibly unfulfilling and disappointing 2013 NFL season. The seas had really parted. Minnesota struggled out of the gate and they never really recovered. Chicago's defense was terrible and they were missing their starting quarterback for a good portion of the season. And then, of course, Green Bay, the kind of standard bearers in that division, Aaron Rodgers goes down and misses about 6 or 7 weeks of NFL action. The seas had parted. The opportunity was there. All the Detroit Lions had to do was step up to the plate and seize the day, and they should have been able to coast to a divisional title and a playoff appearance. But ultimately, that didn't happen. And I think that blame goes in large part on Jim Schwartz, and that's why he's no longer there. He lost control of the team. The team lacked discipline, something it had lacked for several years, and it definitely showed towards the tail end of that 2013 season. At a time where you were expecting that they would play their best football, knowing the opportunity that was ahead of them, they played some of their worst football, and as a result, missed a golden opportunity at a playoff appearance. So out goes Jim Schwartz, in comes Jim Caldwell, and you know what's funny? We're not all the way there yet. There's still a lot of progress to be made, but it is a very, very positive sign to see. Whereas years ago, a lot of black head coach candidates weren't getting jobs that maybe they deserved or maybe they should have. Now we're seeing black coaches that were fired basically being hired as retreads. See Lovie Smith in Tampa and see Jim Caldwell here in Detroit. And that's cool. It actually is. Now black coaches are being rehired after they're fired. They're getting treated like white coaches to a degree. We still got a long ways to go, but it is a very good thing. And I think Jim Caldwell was ultimately a good choice for the Detroit Lions. You bring in an offensive minded guy, knowing ultimately that Matthew Stafford is your franchise piece, and you bring in a calming, steady, more disciplined approach out of your head coach. And I think that's something that could reap some potential big benefits for the Detroit Lions heading into 2014 and beyond. Now, the Lions find themselves in an interesting position in the sense of they could really go one or two directions ultimately as an organization. They could sit there and they could become one of the top teams in the NFC, or they can really regress. And part of that is because of their recent draft history. They've had some notable hits and some big time misses. It's a very scattered bag with Martin Mayhew in their drafts in Detroit in recent years. Still far better than anything Matt Millen did, that's for sure, but a mixed bag to say the least. Some of the hits they've had. A first round pick in 2011, Nick Fairley, finally in 2013, showed the flashes of why people back in that 2011 draft were viewing him as a top five candidate, maybe even a guy that was going to go number one overall to Carolina, even as ridiculous as that sounded then and still sounds now. He finally has flashed that potential that makes you think, hey, him and Sue in the middle of that defense could be a very, very scary combination. Ezekiel Ansah, who they took fifth overall in last year's draft. He had 8.5 sacks as a rookie. He was everything as advertised. He showed me what he showed me at BYU, and that is he could be an impact player and an impact pass rusher at the defensive end position. But he wasn't the only hit for the Detroit Lions in this past draft. Larry Warford, their third round pick at guard. Holy goodness. He was a stud right out of the gate. And I think he was better than Kyle Long as a rookie. And that's saying something because Long ultimately became a Pro Bowler. I thought Warford deserved that spot because, frankly, I thought Warford was better. So the Lions have had some recent hits, but like I said, they've had some very bad misses recently. Notably at the wide receiver position, Ryan Broyles. This is a guy that hasn't flashed much, and when he has been on the field, it hasn't been very long because he gets injured again. And let's not even get into the Titus Young disaster. Those are a couple of receivers you took at round number 2, guys that are supposed to be complements to Calvin Johnson that really contributed nothing. You look at Mikel LaShore, a second-round pick from a couple of years ago. Now it's Reggie Bush, it's Jock Bell. Mikel LaShore, in the eyes of the organization, really is nothing. And you could look in general just at the middle rounds of 2011 and 2012, and they're littered with misses for the Detroit Lions, which means that this organization lacks depth, and it showed last year during the season. There's no question about it. Now, the Detroit Lions, in terms of the 2014 NFL Draft, they have a total of 8 selections. They have a first round, a second round, a third round, 3 fourth rounds, a sixth round, and a seventh round pick. So they have some additional currency in terms of draft picks, although two of those three fourth-round picks are compensatory picks and therefore can't be traded. What that does allow them to do, though, is to be able to say, hey, we can maybe trade a fourth-round pick or a sixth-round pick or a third-round pick to be aggressive and be flexible and move up where we need to get players that we need to in this draft. And I think that's part of the strategy that the Lions have to execute here for the 2014 NFL Draft. I think they really need to address two key areas, one on offense and one on defense. As far as defense, they need speed and athleticism and talent in that secondary, both at corner and especially at safety. Especially with Luis Delmas going away, they need an impact player at safety. There's no question about it, but they could still use some more young athletic depth and speed at the cornerback position. And I would expect that position in that area of the defense to be addressed plenty in this draft. But I don't feel that it should be addressed in the first round. Look, at the end of the day, the Detroit Lions brought in an offensive-minded head coach in Jim Caldwell. You have Matthew Stafford, a franchise quarterback in the NFL, and I don't think anybody disputes that. You have easily one of the two or three best wide receivers in all of the National Football League, if not arguably the very best in Calvin Johnson. You have a nice running back 1-2 combo in Reggie Bush and Jacques Bell. What you need is an explosive number 2 option opposite Calvin Johnson. What I don't want to see happen is what happened to the Houston Texans. They ignored that number 2 wide receiver position opposite Andre Johnson, for many years. And by the time they finally addressed it in this past draft, taking DeAndre Hopkins in the first round, it was too late. You see what happens to the Detroit Lions offense when either A, Calvin Johnson is shut down, or B, Calvin Johnson is out of action. It's not the same offense at all. And this is an offense that could be very prolific and very explosive and put a ton of points and a ton of yards up there. They have to find a dynamic option opposite Calvin Johnson. Now, some of you are going to sit there and say, well, they signed Golden Tate in free agency. Well, who the hell is Golden Tate? This is like another Nate Burleson signing. Okay, worst case scenario, you want to say Golden Tate is a borderline number 2, maybe a very good number 3 wide receiver. It still doesn't change the fact in today's NFL, you really need 3 wide receivers, not just 2. You need to cause as many mismatch problems for opposing defenses as you possibly can. You need to be able to stretch out defenses horizontally and then vertically more than ever before. And I think at the end of the day, that is exactly why the Detroit Lions must get a playmaker on offense in round number 1. Franchise quarterback, elite wide receiver, very good 1-2 running back combination, and an offensive-minded head coach. You give that offensive-minded head coach help on the side of the ball that he is expert at, or he masters at, or it is his proficiency area. They must find that playmaker on offense. They must find that guy on the other side of Calvin Johnson that opposing defenses have to game plan for and will cause opposing defenses fits. That playmaker to me is Sammy Watkins. He is perfect for what the Detroit Lions need. And yes, there is no way in Sam's hell he is going to be available at pick number 10. The way I look at the draft strategy and the team needs for the Lions heading into this draft, yes, you had a need at wide receiver. You have needs at safety and cornerback. You could use another tight end. Frankly, in the middle rounds, you could be exploring finding a young backup quarterback to have in place behind a Matthew Stafford just in case he suffers another injury, which is something he struggled with early in his career. But at the end of the day, the single biggest need for this organization still, don't be fooled, is a number 2 wide receiver opposite Calvin Johnson. And Sammy Watkins is that guy. And they must do whatever it takes to bring a Sammy Watkins to Detroit. I've heard all types of reports that the Detroit Lions love Sammy Watkins. Even if I had heard reports that they didn't care about Sammy Watkins, I would still be advocating for them to get aggressive here, make that big-time move. They have stars on their team. They need another one. They've got Matthew Stafford. They've got Calvin Johnson. They've got Ndamukong Suh. They've got some big-time star talent. But what they need is one more star on the offensive side of the football to really take that offense to another level, to improve the consistency of that offense, to improve the explosiveness of the offense, the versatility of the offense, somebody that could also bring them something in the return game. And Sammy Watkins could do all of that. Now, how far will the Lions have to trade up to get him? Who knows? They might only have to trade up as high as maybe number 5, where Oakland is, a team that's probably desperately looking to trade down and gather additional picks. If that's the case, then that's what you do if you're the Detroit Lions. Damn the price. If it takes you having to trade up all the way to number 2 where St. Louis is because you're afraid a Jacksonville or a Cleveland is going to sit there and take a Sammy Watkins, or a St. Louis would take Sammy Watkins at number 2, then that's what you have to do. Is it going to cost you a second-round pick? Yes. Is it maybe even going to cost you a third or fourth-round pick? Yes. At the end of the day, is it worth it? Oh, God, yes. And you must absolutely do it. To me, if the Detroit Lions come out of this draft with Sammy Watkins via an aggressive trade-up, to me, regardless of anything else they do, they instantly get an A for that draft because they've identified their single biggest need. And not only that, they would have given up a couple of measly picks to move up and get an elite talent in this draft. A surefire elite talent, somebody that is going to be a big-time player at the NFL level. And if the Detroit Lions do that, and maybe in the later rounds they're able to add some depth on the defensive side of the ball, in particular in the secondary, we're looking at a Detroit Lions team that could really turn a nice corner in 2014, surprise some people, and end up winning the NFC North. It wouldn't shock me at all, frankly.